It's cucumber season, and what better way to celebrate this event than by making some dill, salty, crunchy pickles. Today I'm sharing with you my grandma's recipe that will allow you to make this delicious pickle recipe all year round, regardless of your climate, of your temperatures, and all of those things that sometimes hold us back from doing any kind of fermentation project or pickles. So let's begin. As always, in the description of the video I'll put the recipe, the ingredients, the quantities for the batch that I'm making today, which you can scale up or down depending on your needs. But the video is going to act like the how-to, yeah, just so we make everything as streamlined and as efficient as possible. With that being said, the main star of the recipe of the video is the cucumber, and you don't want to do anything specific to the cucumbers apart from just washing them, because I don't know about you, if you grow them in your garden or if you buy them from a farmer's market, either way it's a good practice to just wash them. The next ingredient that grandma used in the recipe are carrots, and you may wonder, why do you want to pickle carrots? Well, if you're a foodie, if you enjoy food from all over the world, you know that sweet and sour works very well together, and that's what the carrots are going to do. They're going to become pickled, they're going to become a bit sour and impart from all the other ingredients in flavors, but at the same time stay very crunchy and sweet. So trust me, it's a nice surprise to add to any pickle project. You know, I use this when I pickle cauliflower, I use this when I pickle green tomatoes. Every single time the carrots add a beautiful surprise to the mix. Now, it wouldn't be a dill pickle without dill. Listen, any kind of dill works. If you have fresh dill, if you have dill stalks, or if you have dill seeds, you do whatever you can, wherever you are. Grandma always said that the dill stalks, especially if dried a bit in advance, they add a more punchy dill flavor to the whole mix. And I agree with her, but I personally believe that the dill seeds actually do a much more of the heavy lifting, if you want, than any other type of dill, either fresh or the stalks. Who knows? That's what she said, that's what I'm telling you. Most of you out there don't have a garden, so know that most grocery stores have fresh dill available almost all year round, being as fresh dill bundles that you can buy, as a dill plant in a pot that you can take home and keep on a windowsill. Rarely you can find, especially in season, bundles of dill stalks, but it's not all year round. And if neither of the two above mentioned are available, you can always find dill seeds in the spice rack or the spice area of the grocery store. So whatever options you have available, use them. I know I'm speaking a lot about dill, but it's a dill pickle, so we want to get the cucumbers and the dill aspect of the recipe right. The next ingredient on the list are mustard seeds. And as with the dill seeds, you can find them in the spice rack or the spice aisle of the shop. And we want to use them because of a couple of reasons. One, in the pickling process, it keeps the pickles, the cucumbers themselves, from going too soft, so it stiffens them up. Secondly, it adds a light spice, a light heat to the whole mixture. And third, it helps with the life extension, with the shelf life of the product. So instead of, I don't know, lasting for 4 weeks in the fridge, they will last an extra month. So that's why we want to add the mustard seeds. The last two ingredients are rock salt and water. I'm not going to talk about water, just make sure it's clean and fresh. But the salt in any fermentation process is very, very important. Never use table salt. I'm not a scientist or anything, but all the anti-caking and all the chemicals that they put in table salt so it doesn't clump up, that just cancels the whole fermentation process and you won't have good pickles. As with the other ingredients, you can find them all in the grocery stores. Just buy rock salt, it's clearly labeled. If you have the option, you can buy mine salt. There's like, most countries have salt mines, And because they're trying to make some extra money, those salt mines sell big bags, like 25-kilo bags of mine salt or rock salt online. That's what I do. I do a lot of fermentation projects. I do a lot of cured meats. So I always have an ample supply of mine salt or rock salt available, and it's much cheaper to buy it in large quantities, as is with everything basically when you buy it in bulk. So please, 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 salt, make sure it's rock salt, pickling salt, or mine salt. Never use any kind of salt. Somebody said, like, what if I use Himalayan pink salt? Well, okay, Rockefeller, do whatever you want. It is going to work well in pickling, but why would you waste such an expensive product on a pickling project? There's no need to use, because you need to use a decent amount. Up to you. If you want to use Himalayan pickling salt, go for it. As for the container where you're going to put everything together, I use a gallon jar or a 5-liter jar. Most of the times that's my small batch quantity. I don't do less than that because there's no point. But if I'm getting ready for winter and I want to make a long-lasting batch, I use a 50-liter drum or container, usually plastic, because it's cheap, it's available, and it does the job just right. To make the brine is pretty simple. Just take a pot, put the water and the salt and mix them together for a couple of minutes, or as much patience as you have, because we want the salt to melt as much as possible. But there's always going to be a couple of grains of salt that just refuse to melt in the mixing process. So when we add the brine to the jar, to the mixture, just make sure that those bits and pieces that refuse to melt, you add them to the jar, to the gallon jar, and they will melt in time. I mean, in time, in a couple of hours. Don't try to sit there for half an hour trying to melt all of the salt grains, because you'll go crazy. So 80% is good enough. Once the brine is mixed, we want to put everything together. So take your jar or container and start layering everything. We want to put everything in layers. So a couple of cucumbers, then a couple of pieces of carrot, then some dill, some mustard seeds, and so on. We layer it so we have the flavor distributed evenly all across the jar. We don't want to put the dill seeds or the mustard seeds, just for example, at the bottom, because you won't be mixing the jar or the container throughout this process. So putting it in layers basically saves you time later and gives you a superior product. At this stage, the important part is to leave headspace. So when you're filling your container, always leave 5 centimeters or 2 inches in the jar without any product, no cucumbers, no nothing, because headspace is always something that is important in fermentation process or fermentation projects. Throughout the pickling of the veggies, fermentation is gonna create bubbles basically. If it's overfilled, both with the brine and the ingredients, you will lose the brine, you will lose a lot of the juices, and that's going to just create mess. That's going to attract bugs and pests. So we want to avoid that just by leaving those 2 inches or 5 centimeters of headspace. The second reason that we want to leave headspace is that all the veggies, the cucumbers and the carrots and everything, must be submerged into the brine. If they peek out of the liquid, then there's a high risk of mold. This is going to be a process that's going to take 7 to 10 days. So in that time, spore molds and all kinds of spoilage bacteria and fungi will try to rob you of your product. If it's submerged in brine, the salinity, the salt concentration of the brine is going to keep all of those undesirables away from your product. To finish this stage, I like to use cheesecloth to cap the jar, because we want the outside wall to be opened to what's happening inside. You know, the fermentation process doesn't just happen on its own. There's beneficial bacteria, probiotic bacteria out there that's going to come inside of the liquid in the pickle juice itself and create the bubbles and ferment the vegetables and give us the probiotic benefits of pickles. So we, by not putting like a solid lid, we help them get inside of it. Don't worry, you know, cheesecloth has pores that this microscopic bacteria are going to go through, and also is going to let it breathe. If there's going to be any bubbling, if there's going to be any gases released by the fermentation process, they will easily go out through the cheesecloth as opposed to a hard lid. As I mentioned, the pickling process is going to take 7 to 10 days. So we want, once we capped it with our cheesecloth or cheesecloth-like material, we want to leave it somewhere in the shade. Dry, shady place for the duration of the process. Please avoid leaving it in full sun, because that's just gonna I don't want to use the word that comes to my mind right now, but that's just gonna spoil everything. You're gonna get mushy, spoiled cucumbers by the end of this, and we don't want that. We want the opposite. We want them to be stiff and crunchy but pickled. So avoid direct sunlight. Keep them in the shade, cool shade, cool, dry space. Now, Grandma had a trick to speed up the process. This is not a miracle. It's not gonna give you pickles in 2 days, for example, but it will speed up the process. And you can do that by using rubber or a silicone tube or hose. You can buy it in hardware stores, and you want to introduce that hose inside of the jar and slowly introduce oxygen by blowing through it. This is going to create bubbles. So if you follow the steps properly and you didn't overfill the jar and you left the headspace, this shouldn't be a problem. So you're introducing oxygen through the tube at the bottom of the jar a couple of times. You know, you do it every 3 days or so, and you blow a couple of times, and that oxygen is going to proliferate the lactobacillus and other beneficial bacteria inside and speed up a bit the process. Not hugely, but let's say instead of taking 2 weeks, it will take 8 days. So still, it's a good enough trick. At around day 4, you should see the first signs of bubbleage or of the beginning of the fermentation. And this is the optimal time if you want to do this trick with the silicone hose and introduce oxygen, because you are literally helping it at the beginning of the fermentation to just be stronger and have that initial kick or up kick. This is how this process works best. Around day 3 or 4, keep an eye on it, when you see the bubbles appearing, that's when you introduce the oxygen and you speed up the process. By day 8, you should already see the late stages of fermentation. They're not done yet, but you'll see a slight discoloration of the cucumbers from bright green or dark green. They will move into a more faded shade of green, even yellow or translucent. After day 8, I strongly encourage tasting it. You know, take one pickle out, slice it and try it. They're edible from day 1. I mean, at the end of the day, they're just cucumbers. But based on your taste, on your flavor profile and how you like your pickles, then you can let it keep on going, or you can finish it at whatever, day 10 or day 8. Some people, you know, like it more undone. Some people like it over pickled. So you do you. But from day 8, start tasting it and see where is the end point for you. I don't know about you, but every time I finish the pickling project, I always do this dish. It involves toast, Swiss chard, oregano, eggs, and onion. I fry the onion and the herbs in a bit of oil, and I make an omelette out of the eggs while I toast the bread over a wood, smoky, burning fire. And if I'm in a particularly good mood, I roast also some garlic at the same time. and I use that garlic that's becoming very soft and mushy almost to coat the insides of that toast when it's done. That adds a really incredible flavor. This base, this medium, complements very well the pickles, and it's my ritual to celebrate another batch of amazing pickles. I personally love this whole process of fermentation. The end product tastes great, it's easy to do, available to most of us out there, and it transforms something that my wife absolutely hates, which is fresh cucumbers, into something that she loves so much that she just eats pickles on their own like it's a snack. It's definitely something that anybody can do. It's a beautiful project to do with your kids, to teach them about the good bacteria, the fermentation process. And listen, many things can be pickled. Almost any vegetable can be pickled out there. But cucumbers is just a very good start point if you want to experiment and experience this magical world of fermentation and of pickles. Start with cucumbers. Luckily, they're available all year round, no matter which climate or zone you live in. They're not that expensive, and think about it, this whole process is not expensive. But if you go to the shop and buy wild fermented sauerkraut or pickles, whatever, it's packaged in a bag, it's going to be very expensive. So try to do this on your own. And now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments if this recipe is familiar to you, if your grandma was doing the same thing, or your aunt or your uncle. And you know, the usual stuff, like, subscribe, and share it with your uncles and aunts and grandmas, because I love talking to them in the comments and learning what I've done wrong, and also learning from them and from their lifelong experience of what works and what doesn't. And most things kind of apply to all of us. You know, we're not that special, we're not that different. So many cultures have a whole cuisine based on fermented products like this dill pickles. So again, thank you very much for watching. Share this video with all of your family, and I will see you next time.